It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. I'm here to share a bit about my story and actually a topic that is really important to me and I'm really passionate about. But before we jump in, I just would really like to start by asking you all to consider a question. What does class mean to you? Now, whatever your answer, I'm sure it's going to depend on a number of things. Family history, your upbringing, your education, basically what class you're from. But whether you're top hats or plain clothes, upstairs or downstairs, I can tell you that class still does exist in the UK. And I would argue that it's one of the biggest social impacts that we have on career progression in the workplace. And when we talk about class in the workplace, stereotypes will often emerge. So, for example, you will often hear corporate strategy, finance jobs, they're for the well-educated, they're for the middle and the upper classes. But the working class, they tend to work in the factory or they tend to work, in social care jobs. And it's these stereotypes that have been really detrimental in terms of social mobility. And when most people think about CEOs, you won't think about working class. But this is Simon Roberts, and he's Sainsbury's CEO. He's from Croydon, and he is working class. And his alias is often referred to as the People's CEO, just shows how little and how many CEOs there are. And this is backed up by stats from KPMG. So only 15% of FTSE 350 board members, so not CEOs, consider themselves from a working class background. But yet people from better off backgrounds are 80% more likely to be in a professional job. And part of this economic problem and why so few companies prioritise diversity is because a staggering 85% of businesses don't even bother to measure it. Now, I'm sure for those in the room, we all know the old saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So again, despite some outliers, companies generally tend to ignore it because it's easy. So corporate Britain does have a social mobility problem, and class is one of the biggest barriers to entry for a leadership position. And without diminishing any other aspect of diversity, it's often the most overlooked, least discussed, and yet it intersects with every other element of diversity. It's wrong. So why does this matter to me? Well, I'm sure it hasn't escaped your notice, many in the room. I'm from Liverpool, and that sometimes can come with a bit of baggage. So people tend to have strong views about Scousers, and that's probably because we have strong views about other people in the country too. But I'm proud where I'm from and my working class roots. So this is where it all started. This is my mum and dad on their wedding day, 1975, 50 years ago today. My dad was a builder and my mum worked in a typing pool. This was a big day for them. First of all, it was their wedding day, but it was probably the first and the last time my dad has ever wore a tie. And then we get on to the next picture. This is me. I had an amazing childhood. My mum and dad really value memories. They saved and spent all of their money on family holidays. So much so, they couldn't even afford a bikini for me, as you can see here. But of course, a joke, I wasn't without anything. I was in a very loving home, full of fun, love and encouragement. And education has always been really important to my mum and dad and my grandparents. And from a really early age, I was always encouraged to do well in school and try my best. And they were always really hopeful that I'd be the first to go to university, and I was. So it was when I was studying for my A-levels that I first really became aware of what class meant. My English teacher told us we were going to be going out into the big world and that actually we would be judged by our voices and where we came from. But he also made it really clear that that would be our superpower and we should always lean into it and own it. And then after that lesson, I didn't really give it another second thought after that. Until, fast forward 10 years, and I was in my first corporate job in London, and I realised exactly what my teacher had meant. There was one colleague who I worked with who'd always claim she couldn't understand what I said, and could I repeat myself when I spoke? It was clear she was doing it to diminish my contribution to what I was trying to do, but of course, like anyone, it impacts your confidence and imposter syndrome set in. And the biggest challenge for anyone from a working class background is often that we don't understand the code. Social cues, network, hobbies, they just don't belong to us. And if you've not grown up in that world and you can't speak the language, that's our biggest barrier to entry. As you'd imagine, this was a really challenging time for me in my career. And actually, I definitely could have made the decision to quit. I thought about it quite a lot. But actually, I still remembered my English teacher's words in the back of my mind, so I did the opposite. I leant in, I found my voice, and I used my roots and my upbringing as my superpower. So when I entered the corporate world, I didn't have a ready-made set of allies and networks of family and friends, but I realised quickly I needed to build one for myself. And I was really lucky, so I found allies, I found sponsors who genuinely supported me and genuinely valued the contribution that I made. And that's really what's made the difference for me in my corporate career. So this is me now, 15 years later. You probably can't see where I am, but I'm a senior leader, and I'm really lucky to work with some incredible people in a global organisation. And two with me, sat at the back. And I got here not by changing who I was, but by owning who I am. And actually, I do belong in a corporate world too. But now it's my turn to give back. And breaking the cycle doesn't really happen by simply being in the room. It doesn't. You need to keep the door open, and you must pull others through. You need to actively identify working class talent and ensure that they have the support to thrive. And that's what I try and do every single day in my role. When I was starting out, I didn't see leaders who looked like me or sounded like me or I could relate to. So I make sure I can tell my story. So again, others like me can see it can be done. And whenever I can, I'll always create chances for the next generation of working class people to step up to and rise up. So this story is my own, but my message to organisation and to leaders in the room is simple. You must take socioeconomic diversity more seriously. So we must measure it, and we must look for opportunities to give working class people a seat at the table. Those companies that do, they'll be the first to get the competitive advantage, because elevating working class talent doesn't just make business sense, it's also the right thing to do. Thank you for listening.